Hello, and welcome to the Those Dweebs podcast, where we have a little bit of everything for everyone. Let's roll the d20 of fate and see what we are talking about today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode. I am sorry that it has been a minute since I've uploaded one of these. Life got busy once again, but I'm going to work on getting a more consistent schedule going here soon. But I want to take a moment and thank everyone for getting me to 200 downloads. That's a milestone. It might be a small one, but it's still a milestone, and I'm super excited and thankful for it. But I have a super special episode today because I have a special guest, and that guest is Spencer.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be on the podcast finally. I had some time to sit down and actually record. Today we have a kind of a cool episode for you. We are going to be reading from Death and the Afterlife, a chronological journey from cremation to quantum resurrection by Clifford A. Pickover.
Super excited.
We're going to go through like the little synopsis that's on the back. I'll read you the introduction, and then we will carry on with the first story, or like the first like dealing with death and everything. So without further ado, let's get into this. So the back synopsis says, a chronicle of history's preeminent and peculiar notions of death in the afterlife. This eerie chronology ventures to the fractal boundaries of psychology, culture, biology, and physics, exploring such diverse topics as the Maya death gods, golems, seances, zombies, and quantum immortality. With the turn of every page, you will encounter beautiful artwork and unexpected insights about death and what may lie beyond.
Honestly, just seeing a little bit of this book is gorgeous. I would highly if you're into the macabre, I would pick up a copy of this because it's gorgeous.
It's got a nice hardcover to it. Has very kind of ornate inlays in it and decorative kind of cover with gold and red
and black.
You know, the macabre colors. Alright. So, here we are. I'll read you some of the excerpts from the beginning before we get into the introductions. The first one is, it cannot be that our life is a mere bubble, cast up by eternity to float a moment on its waves and then sink into nothingness. There is a realm where the rainbow never fades, where the stars will spread out before us like islands that slumber in the ocean, and where beautiful things which now pass before us like shadows will stay in our presence forever. George D. Prentice, The Broken-Hearted, The Country Gentleman, Volume 4, 1854.
That was beautiful.
Life survives in the chaos of the cosmos by picking order of the winds. Death is certain, but life becomes possible by following certain patterns that lead like paths of firmer ground through the swamps of time. Cycles of light and dark, of heat and cold, of magnetism, radioactivity, and gravity all provide vital guides, and life learns to respond to even their most subtle signs. The breeding of a bristle worm is coordinated on the ocean floor by a glimmer of light reflected from the moon. Nothing happens in isolation. We breathe and bleed, we laugh and cry, we crash and die in time with cosmic cues. Lyle Watson, Supernature, 1973. These are pale deaths, which men miscall for their lives. For all the sense of green things growing, each breath is but an exaltation of the grave. Bodies jerk like puppet corpses, and hell walks laughing. S. R. Donaldson, Lord Fowl's Bane, 1977. Life is a narrow veil between the cold and the barren peaks of two eternities. We strive in vain to look beyond the heights. We cry aloud, and the only answer is the echo of our wailing cry. From the voiceless lips of the unreplying dead there comes no word, but in the night of death, Hope sees a star, and listening love can hear the rustle of a wing. Robert Ingersoll, a tribute delivered at his brother's grave, 1879. And there is a table of contents with multiple different things that come of death, including cremation, burial mounds, mummies, gravestones, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and many, many more. We decided in the beginning we will read the first excerpts and the first little story that comes with this, and then from here on out, the next podcast, we'll just kind of pick and choose which way we want to go.
Right.
So the first off is the introduction. Death is not extinguishing the light, it is putting out the lamp because dawn has come. Rabindranath Tagore quoted in Message of the East, 1947. Throughout history, the nature of mystery of death have captivated artists, scientists, philosophers, physicians, and theologians. Symbols and stories involving death permeate our great works of art, architecture, and literature, and they shape our funeral customs and preparations for the ends of our lives. Our interest in death, along with what may lie beyond, also is reflected in popular culture, with movies and books often presenting spooky or transcendent themes involving near-death experiences, the afterlife, and creatures rising from the dead. Many of these themes are ancient, hearkening back to the times when people not only believed in miracles, but also felt a deep connection to nature and a sense of being surrounded by unseen entities. Welcome to Death in the Afterlife, in which we shed light into the darkness. Here a topic can turn from gruesome or emotional to cosmic and transcendent with just the turn of a page. In what other book can you find a discussion of a Viking ship burials alongside an entry on quantum immortality, which mysteriously suggests a way we might live forever through subatomic physics? Few books attempt to describe the wonders of Truman Capote's Grass Harp, which allows us to hear dead people in the sounds of wind-swept grass, and including an entry on electronic voice phenomena in which people hear the dead in amplified recordings with background noise. Each book entry is short, only a few paragraphs in length. This format allows readers to jump in and ponder a subject without having a sort of through of verbiage. Want to know about the Maya death gods and their necklaces of eyeballs? Turn to the entry on Zabala for a quick adventure and a gruesome scare. Might golems or the terracotta army ever gain a semblance of consciousness and interact with the living? Turn to the entries on these baffling beings for a brief introduction. Do Death's head hawk moths and guillotines give you the creeps? What really motivated the kamikaze pilots of World War II? What are Bifrost, Summerland, and transhumanism, and how did the ancient Natufians of the eastern Mediterranean region change our world? Words are hard, guys.
Words are very hard.
Who were Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the Witch of Endor, and Carlos Schwab, and why did the European plague doctors dress in costumes with scary bird-like beaks? Concerned about how physicians determine the moment of death or think about the ethic of euthanasia? We'll tackle these and other thought-provoking questions in the pages that follow. Of course, my approach has some disadvantages. In just a few paragraphs, I can't go into any depth on a subject, however. I provide suggestions for further reading in the notes and references section, which readers interested in pursuing any subject covered in the book can employ as a useful starting point. Sometimes I quote authors or famous researchers in the entries in this book, but purely for brevity, I don't list the precise source or quote of the author for the author's credentials. However, references in the back of the book should help make the author's identity clearer. I have had a long-time fascination with death, dying, consciousness, the afterlife, and topics at the borderlands of science. Some of my interest was rekindled after reading freelance writer Greta Christina's 2005 essay, Comforting Thoughts About the Death That Have Nothing to Do with God. Greta writes, "The fact that your lifespan is infinitesimally tiny fragment in the life of the universe, that there is, at the very least, a strong possibility that when you die, you disappear completely and forever, and that in 500 years nobody will remember you. This can make you feel erased, wipe out joy, make your life seem like ashes in your hands. And then I sigh. Greta admits that she doesn't know what happens when we die, but she doesn't think this essential mystery really matters. She reminds us that we should be happy because it's amazing that we even get a chance to be alive. We get the conscious, we get to be connected with each other and with the world, and we get to be aware of that connection and how to spend a few years mucking about its possibilities. Her essay ends on a bright note as she enumerates items that contribute to her happiness, such as Shakespeare, sex, five spice chicken, Thai restaurants, Louis Armstrong, and drifting patterns in the clouds. As you read through Death in the Afterlife, remember that even if we may consider some of the ideas and rituals surrounding death unscientific, these are still very worthy ideas of study. And the subjects we address are not all depressing. Our rituals and myths are, at minimum, fascinating models of human understanding and creativity, and of how we reach across cultures to understand one another and learn about what we hold sacred. Our brains may be wired with a desire for magic, unseen forces, and a need to exert control over the universe and have our deepest fantasies fulfilled. Perhaps our brains and cultural evolution operate in a way that predisposes us to believe the soul, spirits, and the afterlife to foster community cohesion and create a sense of peace as deaths of family members and ourselves approach. The reasons for our fascination with death and the rituals we use to make sense of death are buried deep in the essence of our nature. Ideas about death, religion, mythology, and the afterlife are at the edges of known and the unknown, poised on the fractal boundaries of psychology, history, philosophy, biology, and many other scientific disciplines. Humans need to make sense of the world and will surely continue to use both logic and mystical thinking for that task. What patterns and connections will we see as the 21st century progresses? How will we continue to cope with death or elude death in the future? Death
Sorry.
Death destroys the body as the scaffolding is destroyed after the building is up and finished, and he whose building is up rejoices at the destruction of the scaffolding and of the body. Leo Tolstoy, Thoughts and Aphorisms, 1905. Organization and purpose of the book. My goal in writing Death and the Afterlife is to provide a wide audience with a brief guide to curious, mystical, and important practical ideas related to death and the afterlife, with entries short enough to digest in a few minutes. We'll roam far and wide through philosophy, popular culture, science, sociology, art, and religion. The entries in this book are ones that interest me personally. For example, when I was a youngster, I became fascinated with writers such as H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe, and painters such as Hugo Simberg and Carlo Schwab. Although I try to study as many areas of science and culture as I can, it is difficult to become fluent in all aspects. This is not a comprehensive or scholarly dissertation, but it is intended as a recreational reading. Alas, obviously, not all of the great scientific, historical, and cultural concepts related to death are covered in order to prevent the book from growing too large. Thus, in contemplating the mysteries of death and the afterlife, I have been forced to omit many topics. Nevertheless, I believe that I have included many entries that have historical and cultural significance or have a strong or curious influence on science and societies. I welcome feedback and suggestions from readers as I consider this an ongoing project of labor and love. This book is organized chronologically in accordance with the year associated with the entry. Dating of the entries can be a question of judgment, and sometimes I have surveyed colleagues and other interesting thinkers and decided to use the date when a concept gained a particular prominence. Many dates, of course, are highly approximate. Whenever possible, I have given at least a partial justification for the dates used. Let's wrap up this introduction by noting that the mystery of the consciousness and the nature of the mind will be studied for years to come. American psychologist and neuroscientist Stephen Kosslyn has made the remarkable suggestion that your mind may arise not simply from your own brain, but from the brains of other people. He notes that all of us, social prosthetic systems, or SPSs, in which we rely on others to extend our reasoning abilities and help us regulate constructively to employ our emotions. A good marriage often occurs when two people can serve as effective SPSs for each other. In some sense, we lend parts of our brains to others. Coslin concludes that your mind arises from the combined activity of your own brain and those of your SPSs. Using this line of reasoning, one might argue that when your body dies, part of your mind may survive. Moreover, as we age, the molecules in our bodies are constantly being exchanged with our environment. With every breath, we may be inhaling hundreds of millions of atoms of air exhaled weeks ago by someone on the other side of the planet. Thinking at a higher level, our brains and organs are vanishing into thin air, the cells sometimes being replaced as quickly as they are destroyed. A year or two from now, a majority of the atoms in our bodies will have been replaced with new ones. We are a seething mass of atomic and molecular trajectories that form threads of fabric in space and time. What does it mean that your brain may have little in common at a molecular level with the brain that you had a few years ago? If you are something other than the collection of atoms making up your body, what are you? You are not so much your atoms as you are the pattern in which your atoms are arranged. People are persistent space-time tangles. It's possible that you have an atom of Jesus of Nazareth coursing through your body. Gilgamesh, the historical king who ruled the city of Uruk, could be part of your brain or your tendons or your heart. An atom in your retina may be the tears of a happy lunar princess 100 years from now. On this subject, English poet John Donne, 1572 to 1631, wrote in Meditation 17, Devotions upon Emergent Occasions, 1624. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine were own. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee.
So, like, I think that's a big reason why, I mean, history, yeah, but, like, ghost hunting has always fascinated me, is because, like, you're getting to tell the stories that most people, like, will forget about. But by going ghost hunting and, like, retelling those stories over and over again and, like, learning about someone who was there in a world before yours, like,
it's almost like they live on, in a sense.
Yeah. And, like, that's what's always, like, been a huge thing for me on why I love it.
And, like, the history behind it, it very much kind of, like, it tells the story. It lets people know of, who said person was or persons wherever we're investigating, and, what practices they may have done. And in retelling their story, they're almost immortalized, whether it be, in spirit or just in, text and the history.
Right.
And finally, we get on to the first little excerpt of death, which is cremation.
Do you want me to read?
I can read.
I was like, if you're sure, okay.
This apparently, the credentials for this: Rudolf Verba, 1924 to 2006, and Alfred Wetzler, 1918 to 1988. Imagine two of the large and frightening crematoria used around the clock to burn and dispose of the bodies during the Nazi Holocaust. According to the 1944 Verba Wetzler project, a huge chimney rose from the furnace room, around which were grouped 9 furnaces having 4 openings. Each opening can take 3 normal corpses at once, and after an hour and a half, the bodies are completely burned. This corresponds to a daily capacity of about 2,000 bodies. Today, for biblical and Talmudic reasons, Orthodox Judaism generally prohibits cremation, the burning of a corpse, as part of a funeral or post-funeral rite. However, as a reaction to the Holocaust, even some secular Jews hesitate to cremate their deceased. Today, crematoria are often computer-controlled, and the cremated remains of our departed loved ones are not really ashes, but mostly bone fragments that usually are then pulverized by a machine that creates a product with the consistency of coarse sand. Large items such as titanium, hip replacements, or casket hinges are removed before the pulverization. The remains may be kept in an urn, stored in a columbarium, a special memorial building, buried or spread over the land or sea. One commercial service actually offers to rocket launch a sample of the remains into space.
I'm sorry.
That's kind of crazy.
I'm sorry. You aren't qualified to go into space while you're alive, but once you're dead, go for it.
Put your remains in a bottle and they'll ship you off to space.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that was a thing.
Buddhists, Hindus, Jains, and Sikhs make very widespread use of cremation. Open-air cremations are practiced in India, for example, on wood-fueled pyres on the banks of the Ganges River. In contrast, the Eastern Orthodox Church and Islam forbid cremation. Christians historically have discouraged cremation, but today many denominations accept the practice. For a quick march throughout history, note that cremation dates at least as far back as 20,000 BCE, the estimated date for the cremated remains of Mungo Lady, an early human inhabitant of Australia. On the basis of her bones, burn mark patterns, scientists believe her corpse was burned, crushed, and burned again, and then covered with red ochre, perhaps in a ritual to prevent her from returning to haunt them.
Huh.
The ancient Egyptians shunned cremation, preferring to embalm bodies to facilitate the transition to the afterlife. Homer, the ancient Greek poet, gave one of the earliest descriptions of cremation, and the ancient Romans performed cremation for their most honored citizens. See also mummies, sky burial, autopsy, cemeteries, and embalming.
A sky burial.
I'm not sure. We might have to cover that one in the next thing. And then on the bottom it says bright flames of the Nagaben.
Oh, that's what that picture is, I'm assuming.
Ah, yeah, that might be. In Ubud, Bali, the Balinese Hindu dead often are buried for a period of time until an auspicious day, when they are placed in a coffin within a buffalo-shaped sarcophagus or wood and papier-mâché temple structure that is carried to the cremation site and burned. The fire is believed to free the spirit and allow for reincarnation.
That's actually really cool. Like that's so fascinating. Like, why people are against it, why people are for it. Like, the process of it all, really.
Yeah, I mean, before reading this, I mean, you can kind of like understand with, especially with like the Holocaust situation and everything
absolutely.
like that. I could understand why that would be like a taboo practice, but the fact that many different walks of life either practice it or don't for various reasons, and in some cases they're used for like the highest burial rites and like the highest person,
right?
So it makes a lot of sense, and it kind of gives you a closer, like, in-depth thought process of like why we do these things,
right? And it's just like traditions that have been like passed down for like generations. I'm still shocked about like the whole sending your ashes to space.
Yeah, that's kind of a kind of a thing that I did not expect to read, but
because like I've had family members pass and like like have been cremated, and it's always been like, oh well, I'm gonna send the remains to like their home back in the mountains and whatnot, or I've heard of like putting them out to sea, but like out to space was like one of those I did not expect to see coming.
I wonder if sky burial consists of maybe the sending into space.
You know what? I can't wait. We must find sky burial.
Oh boy, let me see if I can.
There's a table of contents.
I know how books work, I think.
But yeah, no, like, what? In the comments below, you'll have to like let us know what you think of this, and like if you want to hear more of these and listen to Spencer's amazing reading voice. Because he stutters a lot less than I do when I'm reading things. He's in full-blown concentration mode now.
Should I read for Sky Burial?
Yes, read for Sky Burial.
Alright.
Or unless you want me to read for Sky Burial.
Are you going to trip over words?
I'm probably going to trip over words. It's fine. I can do it.
If you're sure.
If I start getting too bad, I'll hand it back over. Alright. Sky Burial. Odric of... Oh, wow, this is going to be fun. I'm so sorry ahead of time, guys. Odric of Padinon. 1286 to 1331. The vultures gathered on the mountainside to watch, writes journalist Seth Faison. On the grassy slope below, a Tibetan monk placed the naked corpse of an old woman on a sacred clearing and stepped away to sharpen his knife on the side of the rock. He marched once around an old Buddhist monument, mumbling a prayer, and then he cut her body into pieces. Welcome to the ancient practice of Tibetan sky burial, a way of disposing of a corpse by exposing it to vultures and other birds, often on a mountain. Doing good. Aside from being considered a generous way of returning a body to the local creatures, it is practical considering that the ground of mountainous Tibet is often too hard and rocky for digging a grave, and trees may be scarce for building a fire for cremation. Relatives of the deceased may remain nearby, but usually do not watch the practice, also known as, you're going to have to forgive me for this, Hathor, in which a monk or Ragapa. So sorry.
Words are hard.
Words are hard. Body breaker cuts apart the body. Even the bones are consumed by birds after being pulverized with mallets and ground with sampa, a mixture of barley flour, tea, and yak butter. Although the Chinese banned Tibetan sky burials from the late 1960s until the 1980s, the practice is permitted today. It is difficult to determine when Tibetan sky burial became a common practice. It seems to date back at least from the time of the Italian traveler Friar Odric, who journeyed to Tibet around 1328. Although his reports contained some distortions of local customs, he did write of priests and monks who cut bodies to pieces, and then described how eagles and vultures come down from the mountains, and everyone takes his morsel and carries it away. Similar kinds of burials by exposure to the air and predators have been practiced by other cultures, such as some of the Neolithic Britain. Also, through the centuries, followers of Zoroastrianism, an ancient Iranian religion, exposed the dead on raised structures known as Towers of Silence. See also cremation, which we just came from. Ossuaries, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Viking ship burials. And then it says Zoroastrian Tower of Silence in the Iranian province of Yazid. So that was a lot different than I thought it was going to be.
That one's a little more macabre.
Yeah,
that one is not what I expected. They cut up your body into pieces and let birds eat you.
But
I feel
it makes sense.
I feel like with that, if you look at it with an open mind and a point of view, it's almost as if you're returning back to the planet, because you're feeding the creatures, you're feeding the circle of life.
Yeah.
Because you're dead, so you pass on, and then you get to live eternally almost, because you are returning to the planet. You're returning to life and creating that circle of life. It's very kind of morbid, and it's definitely a practice that, in other cultures would probably be highly frowned upon, but I feel with this, like, it's definitely a unique one.
Yeah, I'm gonna be real honest. Like, I was fascinated to know what sky burials are, but I had a different picture in my head. But I don't know what that picture was. But
I mean, what was your picture? Dropping a body out of a skydiving plane?
no, that just sounds like a bad day for other people, to be honest. But no, I legitimately did not know that was a practice, and I'm enjoying this book because now I'm learning about other cultures, and like we are no way are making fun of anyone else's culture. This is just fascinating to me.
I feel this book is going to be very informative, and like the intro said, it's, kind of an introduction to learning other cultures and their burial rites and everything. And then, like, from this, you can branch off and continue to learn
and research and, like, go from there. Wow.
It's definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, it is. But
this has been a fun experience, and I hope to have more time to come on and read you more excerpts from this book.
And then I will also read and stumble over many words.
Because words are hard, guys.
Because words are hard. But yeah, definitely let us know if you want to hear more of this. Maybe like we'll try to like jump around from like one subject and like see where that branch leads us off to and go from there.
Or we can kind of do like what we did, like read the cremation and then it said also see, and then like this one is also see, certain other excerpts. So like maybe we can do that as well.
Right. But I think that we'll have to do it for tonight. You can find the podcast on Podbean, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeart Radio, Player FM, Listen Notes, Podchaser, Boomplay, Podcast Addict, Deezer, Samsung, and Spotify. Thank you guys so much for joining this adventure, and thank you, Spencer, for coming on and reading.
Of course, no problem.
And we will see you in the next adventure. Bye, guys.
Bye.